So one time Ethan was asked when did he start working, and he said at 3. So he's now 37? 37, so that was 35 years ago, 34 years ago. Anyway, I've got to figure this out. This is the Cape Town waterfront, and Colin Devenish is here from there. It's the best waterfront I've ever been to in the world, and I've probably been to 70 or 80 of the best ones. There are 17,500 people working here, but it is also one of the densest, most engaging, and very inclusive spaces. And it was marvelous to work there because never and it's privately owned, and never in the 6 days, but 4 intensive days that I was there, did anyone ever say no. It was a kind of almost coming together of people who owned it. The owners were there, the staff were there, and everyone was kind of focusing on the concept of how that place could become a better place, how it could expand its engagement with people in the community, drawing more people in jobs and that kind of, all that kind of possibilities. The possibilities are enormous. As good as it has such a potential, and Colin will talk a little bit more about that tomorrow when we do the session that I'm going to lead. Now, unfortunately, the downtown doesn't have that same attitude. I was working in the downtown. I gave a talk. I met with most of the senior leadership, and anything that was talked about that could possibly happen had to be planned in enormous detail to get to a product that would take years to get to. The things at the V&A waterfront we could do within a month, 2 months, 3 months, and things could begin to gel and be experimented and happen. The other place where it actually could happen is in Lavender Hill, which is one of the poorer neighborhoods where there's a lot of crime. But by dealing with the crime issues, which is what one of the people that was there was doing, we could create a setting for the enhancement of the public space, but again through what we call lighter, quicker, cheaper. We didn't have to do a lot of planning. We could immediately engage the community, and Vanessa September, who is on our board but is now leading what we call PPS Africa. She can go into those communities and start enhancing them with small amounts of money to begin to create centers of activity and commerce. Similar in a way, but at an extremely different scale in the V&A waterfront. And there will not be no's, there will just be yeses. So the center of that city is more problematic than either of those two others in terms of how it can progress to become the dynamic center that it needs to be. There are 2 extremely good people here, Rich Bradley from Washington, who runs the largest DC bid there, and then Tim Tompkins, who runs the Times Square bid, are here. And what they have done and are doing to those incredibly important districts is a great model for core centers of cities around the world, because you need strong cities, obviously, to be able to build strong neighborhoods. So it was a big deal. We've been doing this for a long time, and I can't say that we've ever had a day when we didn't find something new and exciting and interesting. And we have many, many relationships with other organizations, this being one, Axon Johnson, and the UN Habitat around place and placemaking. And it's been a really joyous experience, and we see it continuing over the next 3 years just to get better and better. But placemaking to us, or to me especially, it's a sacred community process. It's a natural, organic process. It localizes. It is economic development at its core. It is scaled to each community, and it creates social and political capital. So the fact that it's a sacred community process means it's about the people in the community and that they are the experts. And if you treat them with that respect and understanding that what they know is extremely valuable to the shaping of the places that are important to them, you can achieve enormous results, but you have to do it in what we call, and Eric Reynolds is here from London, who is one of the great developers of industrial sites anywhere in the world, and taking them and turning them into amazing engines of economic development. Camden Lock is one of them in London. And those models of lighter, quicker, cheaper, which is what he coined, are the ones that I think can transform cities. We don't have time. We can't do a lot of planning. Architecture needs to fundamentally change so that it's more open and about place than it is about objects and buildings, and everything else does. So I'll get into that. So the idea of place, it can build and support a local economy. It can nurture and define community identity. It can create improved accessibility, promote public health and comfort, foster more frequent and meaningful interactions, and draw a more diverse population. Ethan put this together, and it's actually my favorite diagram that we have. And if we can get that to you, you can look at all the subsets, because each of the subsets start to tell a much broader story of the enormous impact good places can have. Bad places obviously have very negative impacts. So when you begin to realize the enormous power that place has, which is what we're talking about at this conference, we can achieve enormously positive results in a short period of time if we get out of the idea that everything has to be planned and planned and planned to doing and experimenting and so on, which I'll show you about that. So the areas that we feel are the primary areas for transforming the cities anywhere in neighborhoods and even small towns. We run a small town program, is place governance. As soon as you move away from the silos, and the place is what becomes the dominant and most important place to figure out, you can start to take with that community, the community of people in that neighborhood or that city are the experts. They know what they want, they have their aspirations, and you can take them and they can become a force for change around governance, and then that they can deliver place capital. And then the whole idea of re-looking at transportation in terms of how it can build communities instead of slice through them and destroy them, and how community anchors or architecture of place can become a whole different way of thinking about architecture. Because if you think about, we've worked with all the libraries across Canada, library associations, and what we find is, because there's so many immigrants coming into the various cities in Canada, is that they need many things to do, and a library and the functions within a library are just one of them. But they need markets, they need gathering places, and the library is a central place for that. So how do you design the building in the future where it's not just a library as a building and a parking lot, but it's a place that requires all kinds of uses and people can come together? So changing the way architecture for any kind of public institution is a core direction, and we think in terms of placemaking and the future of cities. And then there's these public markets and local economies. There's the deputy mayor from Barcelona is here, and he's going to talk tomorrow, but we're going to, with them, we have this tremendous opportunity to develop a whole discussion around the future of markets. They have 43 markets. No one is more than 10 minutes walk from a market, and they've been there historically. Well, that's a fantastic model for any city in the world, is to get back to that kind of market culture. And some cities like Hong Kong some of them are destroying those same markets, those wet markets. And then the multi-use destinations, I'm going to talk about that. But the outcome that we can create is health and sustainable and viable, livable communities by doing this, focusing on all of these, what we call transformative agendas. And we think of that as a core direction for the partnership with UN Habitat and Axe and Johnson. So the key for us, without hesitation, is finding zealous nuts. Zealous nuts are the people that think beyond their own understanding, their own skill set, and know that there's something bigger, better, more important out there than what is currently available. And what they really is the return of common sense. It's about natural, organic, intuitive. It's time-honored. Someone was saying 500 years ago, this is how communities were actually built, was more just naturally, organically, and there's a real wisdom in that, and we've lost that wisdom enormously. But so these zealous nuts are visionaries with a poorly developed sense of fear and no concept of the odds against them. They make the impossible happen. So that's who we work through, because the obstacles for change are so enormous, so great, that we have to have this kind of collection of people who can see beyond that and force change through politics, through the disciplines, through the communities that they're working on. So it's been very exciting, because wherever we go, we find we're always fishing for them, because they're the ones that can lead change instead of help stop it. So downtown, we've been working in Detroit. We first of all started working in some of the neighborhoods and doing placemaking and creating nodes of activity and using markets and public amenities and small jobs that we could bring in. And actually before that, we worked on the Eastern Market, which is the main market. And then last year, we started working on the downtown with a fellow by the name of Dan Gilbert, who has spent about $1.2 billion and bought 25 buildings. And he's moved something like 8,000 of his employees into downtown Detroit. And he's built 70 other businesses and drawn them into, and Dan Gilmartin will talk more about Detroit and this later, actually it's tomorrow. So this guy has been an engine of change, and we have meetings with him, and we will put together a presentation, and I'm going to show you a little bit of one. Because by the end of the meeting, we've made the decisions on what to do, and we call it lighter, quicker, cheaper, and we go out and we start doing things, and then we look at those, and then we do the next layer of things, and we keep going, because it's an amazing city that was evacuated, basically. It had 1.85 million people in 1950, and today it has 700,000. So the buildings are still there. They're mostly been vacated, and now they're being repopulated with the businesses and the residential that he's bringing in. So this is what it looked like. It was a very dynamic city. It was one of the most impressive cities in North America. It had enormous growth, especially with the automobile industry and through the 20s and into the 30s. There's a picture of that is another one, and this is where we created a place called Campus Martius, which was the center of that city. But today, this is what it looks like. They widened the sidewalks for a Super Bowl and put some planters in there, but other than that, there's nothing there on the sidewalks, but they are 40 feet wide, as you can see. And then these are the empty buildings, which is really quite amazing. But the new buildings are really worse than the old buildings. You can't see. There is a store on this somewhere. There's a restaurant right in this building on the bottom, and I don't know what's on the bottom of the building on the top. And then here's the entranceway to the main building on the square. And again, it's all about the architecture and what you see, and very little to do. And this building here is an older building, but this is called Cadillac Square in front, and you see that all the planting is there, and then you have 2 rows of parking, and then you have a building, and you see just the columns. So our job is to try to transform that into a great destination, but the obstacles are really extraordinary. And these are some of the buildings around this Campus Martius, which is a plan that we did and is getting upgraded again right now. So this is the yellow is the core area. We worked on the Eastern Market up on the corner, and then we'll be working in Greektown, and then we're working on the waterfront doing what we call, or what they call, placemaking. So the Campus Martius is in the middle. It's the main square. There's 2 other parks. I'm not going to talk about those. And this is what it is, looks like from the air. And off of that is a place called Cadillac Square. There used to be a market there. And so now it's become a landscaped area, and now we have to turn it into really a much more dynamic, very incredibly chaotic, highly engaging place. And so these are the areas that around the central square that we're working on. And what I wanted to show you is that in order to do what we have to do, we have to turn everything upside down. The buildings we have to reposition, we have to change the public spaces, we have to deal with the traffic, we have to bring in uses almost immediately, and in fact we are doing that. And we use a quote from Holly White, who is our mentor and person I used to work with, He said, I end in praise of small spaces. The multiplier effect is tremendous. It is not just the number of people using them, but the larger number who pass by and enjoy them vicariously. For even a larger number who feel better about the city center for knowledge of them. For a city center, such places are priceless, whatever the cost. They're built of a set of basics, and they are right in front of our noses if we will look. So this guy, Dan Gilbert, he needs people to come to Detroit to work. So the way he's doing it, he's creating, in a very short period of time, literally a month, 2 months, a whole city, a whole core of the city that is alive with activity. Now, he can't, and we can't get retail in most of those places because there's not enough foot traffic. So we have to create the foot traffic, which means we have to deal with the public spaces and the streets to reactivate those. And so there was a presentation that we did, and out of that, we came up with these principles. The first thing we need to do is get people and products as the primary focus. So if there's architecture, we got to hide the architecture. We got to have stuff coming out on the street. We got to have it alive so that when you come there, you're seeing products and you're seeing people. We have to have the footfall. Even though we don't have quite enough people, we have to get those people to be there, stay a longer period of time, come back more frequently, because that'll give it the life. And as we get the life to it, we'll build the economy, and then we'll build it as an attraction and then as a destination for people to come and work. So then the power of 10, we need 1,000 small spaces. We have something, a city needs 10 destinations. Each destination needs 10 places. And then each place needs 10 activities in it. So we call it 10 times 10 times 10. So we're looking at the uses, not at the design. The design is in the background, although it gets more and more important the more you do this. So then the whole idea of comfort and amenities, being welcome, triangulation, 3 or 4 uses, 10 uses together, streets as places, to not through, localized through markets, local businesses and talent, the architecture of place, and then multi-use, because we don't use the word park very much. We like parks, but we really like gathering places. And when you start using the word park, it just means green and maybe grass and maybe, but when you're in a city, you need much more dynamic places where there might be grass and green, but you need a lot of other things. So thinking small in a big way is the theme that we came up with. This is the end of April. The tools that we use, the power of 10, a place game, placemaking vision and plan, which we did, and then lighter, quicker, cheaper, and then it gradually evolves so that you get into some of the larger scale development and design issues, and then there's a whole campaign and a social media that goes with this. So implementation, we call it ultralight mobile, means we have flatbed trucks and big vans with place activities that we can put into it, and we can move it around. If there's an event, we can move it over to an event. We can enhance something else that's going on. So there's a whole bunch of areas where that can be used. And then the lighter, quicker, cheaper with more of a place focus. And then manage. Intermediate interventions are building extensions, kiosks and market structures, and then long-term development. So you really are building a case. As you build the short term, you're building a case for some of the longer term. But you find out what the longer term is in the process of building for the short term. So ultralight is portable. Its signature recognizable design is built on existing destinations or an event, act as a catalyst or incubator, constantly evolving and adding new activities. So it's really an exciting kind of venue to be part of. For young people especially. So the first thing is the streets. The streets are all over-designed for traffic that no longer exists. So we can do what we call right-sizing, or reducing the street capacity and creating far more dynamic sidewalks and destinations. This actually is right near Taksim Square in Turkey. But this is a wonderful example. And this is all we need to do, is to show this to this team of 20 people who Dan Gilbert has to redevelop the downtown. And we show this, and there's all these aha, I see. Well, we can take that street out in front of one of the buildings, and we can flatten it, and we can then locate all kinds of activity, including cars can go on it, and we can even have a little bit of parking if we want. This is what it looks like. We can take planters and we can move it around, and we can have a carousel on it or whatever, and it can become very active in a very short period of time. We can go to Barcelona, which is always a pleasure, but the wide boulevards, and how the boulevards are, in some cases, double loaded. So you can double load, because we have 40-foot wide sidewalks, we can double load them. So again, we just show images, and I've sort of cut this down a bit. And then you can go to La Rambla, where we want to take this to go down to the river as a kind of La Rambla type space, and we can begin to create that. So here we have this, this building, and you can see where if you put something in the middle of the public space, it's a very long distance to the actual building itself, and there is a store going to go in there, a Papa Joe's, which is a fairly high-end food establishment, but it will have a very difficult to get to the building from the park. So we can take this building and we show these kinds of images of extensions. This is actually here in Stockholm. And we can take a building that's in Paris and we can show how a fairly traditional Gregorian building can actually have life at the bottom. And I know a lot of people would cringe at having something so messy at the bottom, but if you tried to take this away, you'd have the third French Revolution, because look at what they have there, where each of these comes out of the building on a daily basis, and then they have a big market there as well on 3 days a week. But you can't do the kind of job you need when you can bring a building like this alive. If it was just small storefronts, it wouldn't be anywhere near as effective. And so, yes, so then you come back and you say, okay, well, this is in our neighborhood in Brooklyn, where this storefront, a bookstore, has 10 things to do in front of it. And you say, well, let's take that to a whole street. And you can take this to another, this is a street in Paris, and this is a triple loaded street where you've got a sidewalk, a walkway, and a storefront or a restaurant, and a street and a strip of retail activity or restaurant, and then a walkway, and then a building. And so that's about 10 stores on one block that are all have 10 uses. So that really becomes a very lively street. And because we can't get the retail, we can do shallow uses within those buildings to activate the street. And then as people come, we can start filling back into the back parts of the retail. So this is what it looks like. You see even the flower stand is double loaded, and the vegetable, fruit, and food are all double loaded. And then you can go to Istanbul, where we had a meeting of the group that's sort of coordinating this. I'm almost done. And you can look at the street life there, and you can say, well, wait a minute. Now, we have all these different people, immigrants, from countries like this. And why can't we create something like this so that we can bring the immigrant populations into this to activate and enhance this? And here's the hardware store on the street. And I don't see the architecture, but there's every product you can have right there in your face. And a restaurant street like this is hardly passable, but it can be glorious. And so going back to Detroit and that space, and if you take some of those principles and you actually lay them out on that, and then you start implementing, which we started to do, and these are the strategies: make things happen now, create energetic anchors of activity, crowdsource ideas, make it a movable feast, get life on the streets, bring the inside out. And so this is a picture from yesterday, or the day before yesterday. So you can do a lot, but you have to turn everything upside down to get it right side up. And as we all know, we don't have much time to be able to affect change and transform cities. And the way we're planning and designing them, we're going very fast nowhere. Thank you.